David Savoy, and I'm with my lovely wife and partner, Sharon Savoy, who's won more world and international dance championships than anyone in the history of the exhibition event. And we are going to teach you some principles so that you can learn how to fly. So you can learn the principles of doing aerial lift work. A friend of mine once told me, who was a political science professor, I teach them correct principles and I let them govern themselves. We do not want to regiment you into precisely what you must do at every turn in the road. What we want to do is to teach you the correct principles so that you can create for yourselves the lifts and drops that you want to do. Now, everybody does something better than somebody else. And what I suggest you do when you plan your choreography or you plan your dance routines is you determine what you do well and then apply the principles to it. The first principle that we must discuss whenever we're talking about aerial work is the principle of balance. Now, balance, inevitably, we're talking about gravity, and we're talking about somebody's center of gravity. In order to be in a state of balance, you must be supported. Your center must be supported by your base of support. The base of support is defined by that area of the floor from toe to toe, heel to heel. Then, of course, if you're on just one leg, your base of support is from toe to heel. Now notice, as the size of the base shrinks, the more difficult it is to balance. It is absolutely critical that you know where your base of support is and where the girl's center of gravity is. You'll notice if you are just standing still and you have your center of gravity, if you go too far forward, you'll fall forward. If you are too much to the side, you'll fall in each respective side. So the man's responsibility first and foremost is to get his center over his own base of support, otherwise he will be very unstable. After he has done that, then he must get the girl's center of gravity over his base of support. And once again, we will demonstrate by doing a two-hand overhead lift. She will grab my wrist, she will press down, she will raise her leg, and I'll put her up in the air. Now, if I bring her forward, it'll cause me to go forward. Or if she's too much to the side, I'll go to the side. And if it's too much back, I'll go back. And if it's too much to the left, I'll go to the left. So just as we have to keep our center of gravity over our base of support, when the girl's up in the air, we must do the same for the girl. Getting back to our teeter-totter analogy, you notice that in order for a teeter-totter to work, you must have a rigid surface. It can't be like a noodle. So in order to be able to balance somebody and have their center of gravity over your base of support, your body must be latticed with your muscles and your sinews and your skeletal structure so that it's all crisscrossed and it comes to a focus in your center. You notice how a lot of ballet dancers, they have this tremendous carriage. Well, they don't have it just to look good. One of the things that they need to do is to have their center connected to all parts of their body so that they have control. That is an essential ingredient in doing lift work. Because if the girl goes up in the air and all of a sudden her legs become limp or her arms become limp and she starts drooping, you will not be able to support the girl. Now that you understand your base of support and where your center of gravity is, we're going to now discuss the principle of opposition. This is somewhat of a profound principle because we take it for granted. Sir Isaac Newton first announced it when he said, "For each and every action there is an equal and opposite reaction." Now, let us take, for example, the sprinter. The sprinter gets in his hurdling, or his starting blocks, and he presses as hard as he can against a stationary object. Now, we think that it is our pushing back which is propelling us, but what is actually propelling us is the force the reactionary force of the block pushing against the foot. The same is true with dancers. When they are using the floor is actually their starting block. And to the degree that we are pressing against the floor is pressing against us. And this gives us propulsion. So everything that we do in lift work almost seems like the mirror opposite. If you want to lift, the girl must press down. And if you want to go down, you must lift to lower. We are going to demonstrate a side lift. I'm just going to slide my shoulder in and put my arm around Sharon's waist. I'm going to lift her up, and notice as she does, she is going to take this arm and she's going to put it on my shoulder, and she's going to press down. And it is the pressing down which allows her to lift up. Now, if she were to, let's say, try to help me, and I go in and reach for her, and let's say she tried to jump, it's not going to have the same effect, because I needed her oppositional force in order to lift her. So this oppositional force must be timed. So when I reach in, we connect, she presses down, and up we go, and we complete. Now we are going to try that lift from our right side. We have demonstrated the principle of if you want to go up, you must press down. Now, if we want to lower the girl and make her look light and weightless and aerial, we are going to lift to lower. I come into the right side, she presses down like she did on the other side, and notice when I get to the point where I'm about to lower her, I lift. And really what I'm doing is I'm raising her center of gravity to the point where she's weightless. And she will know by that weightlessness that that is her lead, that I'm going to set her down. It is a kinetic feeling that she will understand. I'm going to do it a little faster. I'll do it from the left side now. If I were spinning, she needs to know when to come down. It's that lift that lets her know when to come down. For many of the people who say like dance in classic divisions or the music is selected for you, this is particularly important, this principle, because you don't know when the music's going to end. You can't choreograph it. So you have to be able to physically and kinetically tell your partner. You can't verbally tell her these things. So if you understand that we must lift to lower, and to go up we must press down, I cannot stress these principles enough. And I will repeat them throughout this lecture and other lectures that you will see on our videotapes. Of course, as our students, we want you to look exceptionally good. And here's another principle that if you obey it, you will look 10 times better. You must create lines, clear, distinct lines. Now, how do you create lines in your body? Well, first of all, you must straighten the knee and point the toe. Sharon does it exceptionally well. When you raise the leg, you're going to want to take this pressure and hold it in the head. Push it this way.
I'm using this to counterbalance it. If I went with the direction of the leg, I would move my center away from my balance. Instead, I'm using the law of opposition forces, and as equal as much as this goes up and away from my body, I pull, counterbalancing with the opposite side. And lift to lower.
Now, these are the difficult things to do. And people will not understand what you're doing when you're doing them. All they will notice is that you're dancing much better when you do them. It's very difficult to create these tensions in our body. For example, even simple movements. If I want to increase my range of motion, which always looks aesthetically pleasing, If I just put out my hand like this to Sharon, it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. If I elongate this hand, it looks better. But if I use this shoulder to rotate it back and then reach to her.
And again, you're using the law of opposition. This is pulling equally against this to create the longest line possible. But it's created within the internal forces of our body, and like David said, it's not visible. What is visible, you see, has greater presence and a greater sense of line from these distance. When we stand even in a simple line like this, if I don't extend within my body, my line ends at my fingertips or my toe tips. But if I create that counterbalance forces, my line is about 3 inches longer than the actual edge of my fingertips and toes. We want to create longer and bigger pictures, particularly on the competition floor when someone needs to see you from far away.
And these lines, when you create them, they'll look like they're stretching into eternity. They'll have a projection quality to it, where if you have short arms, they go no further than the end of your fingers. Once you've mastered the principle of creating lines, then you're going to want to do some very sophisticated things by creating curved spaces. And you can become most effective when you combine the use of lines with curved space. For example, let's say if I did a simple neck drive. I'm going to create this curved space and curve my torso. Just come on back. Now, you may not have noticed it. The ordinary person wouldn't have noticed how much I was creating this curved space and this contraction within my body. But there are going to be many times when you're going to have to use these contractions in order to create an extra special effect or to give yourself room to move, because your center is constantly moving. Let's now review what we've learned. We've learned about center of gravity. We've learned that it must be over our base of support. We've learned that we must lift the lower and press down to go up. We've learned to use lines by getting a full range of motion in our body, and we've learned how to use curved spaces. Now we're fully prepared to add the element of movement. Now this always becomes difficult because it means your center of gravity is constantly changing. We're going to demonstrate movement and how effective it can be by using a lift that a couple by the name of Landry and Verna used to do, and they were a fabulous couple in the days of vaudeville, and they're a wonderful couple, and we're just going to do the simple lift that they used to do. Now you notice that her center of gravity was constantly moving around my body. By using contact, and I was lifting, she was pressing down, I was able to turn. But by adding the principle of movement, that is the final element that we need in order to create a good routine. Now that we have all these principles under our belt, we have center of gravity, base of support, use of line, use of curved space, and the law of opposition and movement. Now we can progress to doing our lifts. Now we're into the demonstration phase, and we'll just begin to show you some of the lifts that we're going to do for you using these principles. Once again, we'll start with the side lift. The man must lunge in, widen his base of support, so that her center is over his base of support.
I come very close to the man. I do not want to be by his shoulder, because that's far away from his base of support. I want to place my right armpit as close as possible to his base of support, which would be his neck. I then place my arm around his back so it's hidden, and I press strongly down as he lifts me up. And David lovingly lifts me to lower, so I look light, and he lifts me out.
Now we're going to do the other side. Once again, I slide in, I lock, Now we are going